When John Wayne passed away in 1979, his funeral became one of the most publicized farewells in Hollywood history. Stars, politicians, and admirers gathered to honor a man who symbolized an era of American cinema. Yet one absence quietly drew attention among those who knew the industry well: Richard Boone. Boone and Wayne had shared screen space, professional circles, and the Western genre itself, making Boone's decision not to attend seem puzzling to some observers. Over the years, this absence sparked speculation, often reduced to rumors of rivalry or personal dislike. The truth, however, is far more layered and human. Boone was never a man who followed expectations simply to satisfy appearances. His life, values, health, and worldview all played a role in choices he made during his later years. Understanding why he stayed away requires looking not at a single incident, but at the full arc of who Richard Boone was and how he related to fame, grief, and public ritual. The making of a private individual. Richard Boone was shaped early by discipline, intellect, and a strong sense of independence. Raised in Los Angeles with deep historical roots and a classical education, he developed a thoughtful, sometimes contrarian personality. His wartime service as a Navy aerial gunner during World War II further reinforced his stoic nature and his understanding of loss and mortality. After the war, Boone trained seriously as an actor, studying at the Actors Studio and embracing emotionally demanding material. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Boone never chased celebrity for its own sake. He valued craft over applause and depth over spectacle. This mindset followed him throughout his career, even as he became widely known through television and film. Boone's private nature was not a pose, it was a core part of his identity. Public ceremonies, especially those saturated with media attention, often conflicted with how he believed personal moments, including grief, should be handled. A career built on substance, not symbolism, Boone's success came from characters defined by complexity rather than myth-making. From medic to have gun will travel, he portrayed men who were intelligent, conflicted, and often morally nuanced. His most iconic role as Paladin presented a Western hero who quoted literature and weighed ethical consequences, standing apart from simpler archetypes. While Boone respected the power of popular storytelling, he was wary of reducing human experience to symbols. John Wayne, by contrast, represented a more monumental image of American heroism, one that resonated deeply with audiences, but leaned heavily into symbolism. Boone never publicly denied Wayne's cultural impact, but he approached acting from a different philosophical angle. For him, art was about inquiry rather than affirmation. This difference did not require personal hostility to exist, but it did create emotional distance. Boone did not see himself as part of the mythology surrounding Wayne, and that separation influenced how he engaged with events centered on Wayne's legacy. Professional respect without personal intimacy. Despite frequent assumptions, Boone and Wayne were not close friends. They worked together and respected each other's professionalism, but their relationship remained largely confined to the set. Boone was selective about personal relationships and rarely cultivated friendships based on fame or convenience. He gravitated instead toward writers, theater professionals, and local artistic communities, particularly later in life. Wayne's world, filled with public appearances and ceremonial roles, was not one Boone felt drawn to. When Wayne died, the funeral reflected the scale of his public persona, complete with widespread media coverage and national attention. For Boone, attending such an event would not have represented a deeply personal farewell. Rather, it would have placed him in a public performance of mourning, something he consistently avoided. His absence, therefore, was less a statement about Wayne and more an expression of Boone's lifelong boundary between professional association and personal emotion. Discomfort with public mourning. Boone held strong views about grief and remembrance. He believed mourning was an inward process, not a public display. Over the years, he had expressed discomfort with Hollywood's tendency to turn deeply personal experiences into spectacles. Funerals of major stars often became media events, with cameras capturing every expression and movement. Boone found this approach unsettling. To him, respect did not require visibility. He believed honoring someone's life could be done quietly, through reflection, rather than attendance. This perspective aligned with his broader rejection of performative aspects of celebrity culture. Boone rarely attended high-profile social events, award ceremonies, or public celebrations unless his presence served a clear purpose. In the case of Wayne's funeral, Boone may have felt that showing up would place him in a spotlight he neither wanted nor believed appropriate for the moment. Choosing absence was his way of preserving sincerity, health, and physical limitations. By the late 1970s, Boone's health was in noticeable decline. Though not widely publicized at the time, he was dealing with serious medical issues that would later lead to his death from throat cancer in 1981. Travel, extended public events, and emotionally intense situations were increasingly difficult for him. Attending a large funeral would have required physical endurance and emotional energy he may not have had. Boone was known to manage illness quietly, avoiding public discussion or sympathy. Even close colleagues were often unaware of the extent of his struggles. It is entirely possible that his absence was influenced as much by physical limitation as by personal philosophy. Rather than drawing attention to himself or his condition, Boone chose discretion. In doing so, he remained consistent with how he approached vulnerability throughout his life, privately, without spectacle, and on his own terms. Distance from Hollywood itself. At the time of John Wayne's death, Boone had largely removed himself from Hollywood's inner circle. He had relocated to Florida and previously spent years in Hawaii, focusing on theater, writing, and community engagement. These moves were deliberate, reflecting his desire for a quieter, more grounded existence. Boone was no longer immersed in the daily rhythms of the film industry, nor did he feel obligated to participate in its major events. The physical and emotional distance from Hollywood contributed to his detachment from ceremonies tied to its legends. Boone had already redefined success away from box office numbers and celebrity influence. His work in regional theater, teaching, and cultural advocacy mattered more to him than maintaining visibility among industry elites. Wayne's funeral, while significant historically, belonged to a world Boone had consciously stepped away from, making his absence a natural extension of choices he had already made. A man guided by principle, not expectation. Richard Boone was known for following his own moral compass, even when it ran counter to public expectation. Throughout his life, he made unconventional decisions, from leaving stable careers to questioning dominant narratives in his industry. He did not attend events simply because attendance was expected. If Boone felt his presence would be insincere or misinterpreted, he chose not to participate. This independence sometimes made him seem aloof or difficult, but those who knew him understood it as integrity. In the case of John Wayne's funeral, Boone may have felt that attending would imply a closeness or admiration that did not reflect his true feelings. Rather than offering a gesture he believed lacked authenticity, he opted for silence. This choice was not an act of disrespect, but a refusal to perform sentiment. Boone believed that honesty mattered more than appearances, even when silence invited speculation. The meaning behind the absence. Richard Boone's absence from John Wayne's funeral was not the result of a single grievance or dramatic conflict. It emerged from a convergence of factors: a private nature, philosophical differences, declining health, distance from Hollywood, and a deep discomfort with public displays of grief. Boone lived and died by principles that prioritized authenticity over conformity. He honored people in ways that felt truthful to him, not in ways that satisfied public curiosity. When Boone himself passed away in 1981, his wishes reflected the same values: opting for a quiet farewell with his ashes scattered at sea. In the end, Boone's choice not to attend Wayne's funeral tells us less about Wayne and more about Boone. It reveals a man who understood that respect does not always require presence, and that sometimes the most honest tribute is the one made in silence.